Come, come, let's hear the moral story. Come, come, let's hear.
All right, let's dive into one of the wildest, weirdest, and most wonderful fairy tales the Brothers Grimm ever put to paper. We're talking magic, we're talking broken promises, and we're talking about a hero who is, well, part hedgehog. This is the incredible story of Hans My Hedgehog.
So our story starts with this farmer. He's rich, but he's not happy, mostly because his neighbors are always teasing him for not having any kids. One day he's just had it. He's at his breaking point, and in a moment of pure frustration, he yells out this desperate wish. And in the world of fairy tales, you have to be careful what you wish for, because the universe has a way of taking you very, very literally.
And just like that, his wife gives birth to a baby boy. They name him Hans My Hedgehog. And here's the thing. From the waist up, he was completely covered in sharp hedgehog quills. But from the waist down, he was a little boy.
Now, as you can probably imagine, this presented some challenges. Because of all those sharp spikes, his own mother couldn't hold him. He couldn't sleep in a cradle or a bed. It was a pretty painful situation, literally.
So for 8 long years, he was a total outcast, even in his own house. He had to live on a little pile of straw behind the stove. And his father grew to resent him, even wishing he would just die. It's a rough start for our hero. So after 8 years of this miserable existence, Hans decides, you know what? I am done. And he comes up with a very, very specific plan to get out of there for good.
First, he asks his dad for a set of bagpipes. Okay. Then he asks for the family rooster to be taken to the blacksmith to get horseshoes. Yep, a rooster with tiny little horseshoes. And his father, who's just overjoyed at the idea of getting rid of him, basically says, "Sure, kid, anything you want."
And so Hans hops on his rooster, gathers up all the pigs and donkeys from the farm, and rides off deep into the forest, vowing to never, ever come back. And you know what? Out in the forest, Hans actually starts to thrive. He climbs up into the highest trees, watches over his growing herd of pigs, and plays the most beautiful haunting music you've ever heard on his bagpipes. And it's that music that's about to change everything. One day, a king gets completely lost in the woods. He hears this enchanting music and sends a servant to find out where it's coming from. And there he is, Hans My Hedgehog, sitting on his rooster up in a tree. Hans says he'll show the king the way home, but he wants something in return, the very first thing that greets the king when he gets back to his own courtyard. Now this first king, he's a schemer. He figures Hans can't read, so he writes down the promise, but sneakily adds the word "not" to the contract, totally voiding the deal. He has zero intention of ever paying up. Well, time goes by, Hans's herd of pigs gets bigger and bigger, and then, what do you know? A second king gets lost in the very same forest. He hears the music, finds Hans, and gets offered the exact same deal. Both kings agree to Hans's price, but here's the difference. The first king was deceitful, while the second king is an honorable man who fully intends to keep his promise. And when each of them gets home, what's the first thing they see running out to greet them? Their beautiful, overjoyed daughters. So, after many more years, Hans's herd of pigs is absolutely massive. He decides it's finally time. Time to leave the forest and go collect what he's owed. He rides his rooster all the way to that first kingdom. But the dishonest king hasn't forgotten their deal. In fact, he's given his guards a standing order. If anyone shows up looking like a hedgehog boy on a rooster, you are to shoot him, stab him, and cut him down immediately. But Hans is clever. He just spurs his rooster, which flaps its wings and flies right over the guards, landing on the king's windowsill. The terrified king has no choice but to hand over his daughter. But a little ways from the castle, Hans stops, pierces her with his quills, and sends her back home in disgrace, telling her that's the price for her father's lies. His arrival at the second kingdom, though, couldn't be more different.
The honest king, true to his word, had told everyone to welcome Hans like he was royalty. He's greeted with parades and respect and brought straight to the palace.
The second princess, as you might expect, is pretty terrified when she sees him. I mean, who wouldn't be? But because she loves and respects her father, she agrees to honor his promise and marry Hans.
So, they have a huge royal wedding. But that leads to a pretty prickly problem for the wedding night. The princess was scared of his quills, and for very good reason.
Seeing how scared she is, Hans gently tells her not to worry, that he won't hurt her. Then he turns to the king and gives him a set of very specific and very strange instructions for what to do that night.
Here's the plan, and it's pure fairy tale magic. When Hans goes into the wedding chamber, he's going to take off his hedgehog skin. The king's men have to be waiting right outside. The second he does, they have to rush in, grab that skin, and throw it into a giant, roaring fire until it's nothing but ash. And it works. The plan goes off without a hitch. The men grab the skin and toss it in the fire. The moment it's consumed by the flames, the curse is broken. Hans is transformed into a handsome young man, though he's blackened from the fire. The king's doctors come and heal him, and he's finally free. Hans inherits the kingdom from his new father-in-law, and he and his queen live happily ever after. Well, almost. After a few years, he decides it's time to go back to his childhood home, and he brings his wife with him. He shows up at his father's house, but his dad has no idea who this handsome king is. The old man just says his only son was born a hedgehog, and he rode away on a rooster a lifetime ago and was never heard from again. It's only then that Hans reveals who he is, and his father is just overcome with joy. The family is finally back together, and they all go to live in Hans's new kingdom. It's a happy ending that all started with one single bitter wish. It's a pretty powerful, if bizarre reminder, right? Be careful what you wish for. You just might get it, quills and all.